Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, NBA reporter for Buha's Block, and welcome to another live show. The Lakers won their third straight game, beating the New Orleans Pelicans 111-103 to improve to 23-11 on the season. Another fourth quarter comeback, another clutch victory. LA is now 13-0 in clutch games this season, a league best record, and has 8 double-digit comebacks this season. This one technically was not a double-digit comeback because they only trailed by 9, but nearly was their 9th double-digit comeback of the season. They jump back up to number 3 in the West. This shows like 2 days ago, the Lakers were 3rd in the West. Yesterday, they dropped to number 5 with both Denver and Houston winning. And then today, because the Lakers won, they jump back up to number 3. Also of note, San Antonio, who the Lakers will be playing tomorrow night, just lost by 1 to Memphis in Memphis. And really rough games for De'Aaron Fox. Stephon Castle had an inefficient night. Harrison Barnes had an off night. So really rough shooting performance for San Antonio tonight, with Wemby coming off the bench on a minutes restriction. So they'll also be playing on the second night of a back-to-back against the Lakers tomorrow. But we'll see how the shooting regression works out for them coming off of a really rough performance. Though the Lakers had their own rough performance tonight up until the fourth quarter when they hit some big shots. But shout out to the late night gang. Shout out to everybody in the chat. One quick update here. Your boy had largely avoided the cold and flu season during the winter, but I got hit by a brick wall yesterday. I've been in bed or on the couch watching the game all day. So with it being a back-to-back front end, with also us doing Lakers Collective tomorrow morning, I am probably going to try to keep this closer to an hour tonight. I have a gnarly headache right now, so not feeling great, but was not going to take the night off, of course. And, I'm going to gut through this for like an hour or so, which means I will go for like 4 hours. Just wanted to give you guys a quick update on that. But let's get into it. Buha's big picture is another fourth quarter shutout. And I think this is also going to just lead directly into my stat of the night, which was through the first 10:44 of the fourth quarter, the Pelicans only scored 10 points. They finished with 17 in the fourth overall, but LA nearly pitched a shutout. Like New Orleans was stuck at 4 points in the fourth quarter for quite some time there. And the Lakers, like, I don't know what it is. We were joking about it on Spectrum yesterday, but like, they're the 24th ranked defense, but in clutch situations. And granted, it's not the largest sample size and it's not the best competition. They don't have a lot. Like they had the clutch win over San Antonio earlier in the season, but most of their clutch wins have been against like mediocre to subpar teams, although they also beat Toronto and Philly in the clutch. So it is worth noting like that they have had some nice crunch time wins, certainly. But the Lakers defense in the clutch has been like, I think that's sometimes the frustrating thing with this group is that you see these stretches of how they're defending for a couple minutes here, 5 minutes there, 7 minutes there. And it's like, you just want to see that more consistently. Cause to me, this was a tale of kind of a tale of two halves and also a tale of 3 quarters versus 1 quarter, because I thought through the first 3 quarters, LA largely had not been good defensively. Like there had been some nice defensive moments. And as we talk about with the Lakers defense, they do have a certain level of defensive playmaking, whether it's taking charges or deflections, steals, blocks. Like they do have guys who can make plays defensively that stand out and are loud. But the average defensive possession, there was far too many breakdowns in terms of miscommunication, botched switches, botched coverages, guys just miscommunicating left and right. And you had situations where Zion is waltzing to the rim undeterred. You have Trey Murphy coming off ball actions and is wide open for basically layups for him. He scored a career high 42 points tonight. So he had a hell of a game. But then you get to the fourth quarter and LA again pitches close to a shutout. And it did really remind me of the Memphis game, the second Memphis game. And, because LA entered, for those who didn't watch the full game or weren't, really paying attention, or if you did, like LA obviously entered the fourth quarter down 7. It was 86-79. So LA was in a bit of a hole. They're down 3 at the half. Then a bit of a back and forth third quarter, but New Orleans finally, like LA went on a run, then New Orleans went on a run, then LA went on a mini run, and then New Orleans ended the third with some momentum. And then all of a sudden, LA opens the fourth with an 8-0 run led by LeBron James. He had a couple of threes and also had an assist to lead that. And then from that point on, LA was basically in control of this game the rest of the way. But in the spirit of I don't want to take away too much from this one. LA was shorthanded and they were playing I will note New Orleans, despite their record and despite how young they are, this is a pretty talented roster. This is a pretty talented group, especially the Lakers had not seen Zion yet. And I thought Zion didn't have the best game, just 15 points on 7 of 13 shooting, but you saw he is a matchup problem. And when LA wasn't able to get in proper positioning and contest or block him, he was able to slip through cracks, split, double teams and just get to the rim and score at will. So, but I think that the story for me coming off of tonight was just the thorough domination in the fourth quarter of LA entering down 7, but winning this game by 8. It sort of reminded me of the Charlotte game also earlier in the season, where they basically were treading water for 3 of the 4 quarters and had one really good quarter. In that game, it ended up being the third quarter, and that ended up being the difference. But tonight, they had a solid, I'll say they had a solid first quarter. They're up by 4 in the first quarter. I thought the 3-point defense was kind of shaky in my opinion. I thought New Orleans got a bunch of good looks in that first quarter and just didn't capitalize. But you could also say the Lakers went 3 for 17 in the first half. And, I think Luka and Marcus were a combined 1 for 10. So that right there was, LA had its own shooting regression that hit in the second half, which I'll be touching on. But I just want to highlight what we're seeing right now with LA in crunch time is special. And again, I think there's been some really solid wins against San Antonio and Philly and Toronto and some of the better teams in the league. But obviously there's been some of the games against the Memphis or a New Orleans. But regardless, it does take a certain mental fortitude and a certain resilience and just their ability to focus for key stretches and out execute their opponent, I think has been impressive. And it's just getting to the point where you do not want to be in a close game against this Lakers team. And it's unfortunate that we haven't really seen many of those against some of the better teams in the league. We saw Minnesota early in the season. We saw, again, the San Antonio game. That's probably their best win, arguably their best win against a team in crunch time. Because you also have the Philly and Toronto games as well. But I would like to see whether it's the San Antonio game tomorrow night or one of these upcoming games. I mean, they don't play a really good team for a while after that. Maybe Milwaukee, since with Giannis, or Toronto later in the month. Denver, depending on Jokic, probably isn't going to be back for that one. But the Clippers are playing better. You have Cleveland at the end of the month. So there are going to be some tests coming up in terms of better opponents who I want to see this version of the Lakers with the rhythm they're in, how they're playing, what that looks like against a really good team in a crunch time situation. In terms of notable performers, we have to start with, I think LeBron is where we have to start. 30 points on 10 for 19 shooting, 3 for 5 on threes, 7 for 7 at the free throw line, 8 points, 8 assists. He has been awesome. I think coming off the Memphis games, he was averaging 29, 8 and 8 off those two. And then you add in another 38 and 8 performance, 2 steals and a block. I just think LeBron is straight up back. And I don't know if he's quite to the level that he was at last season in terms of being top 6 in MVP, top 6 in all NBA voting, and all NBA second team guy. But these past, I think the last 12 games, he's at something like 26, 6 and 6. He's right back there in terms of being a true positive and looking like an all-star player again. Like, I think the only thing right now with all-star voting, he's not going to be voted in as a starter, but I think the one thing holding him back would just be how many games he's missed. But over the last 12 games, he's clearly played at an all-star level. And I think he's just hit a really nice rhythm, and he spearheaded that run toward the end of the third into the beginning of the fourth. I think the defense continues to be a mixed bag. And certainly there are some times where he is a culprit in some of the breakdowns, but I also think, again, 2 steals and a block, like he is making plays defensively. And I thought he was quarterbacking the defense at times well, especially in that fourth quarter. Then next player, of course, is Luka, who nearly didn't get to 30. It was his 20th 30-point game of the season, but hit a couple of free throws late, missed a couple of free throws late, which would have got him to 30, then got fouled again, ended up getting to 30. But 30 points, 2 rebounds, 10 assists, 2 steals and a block for Luka, 5 turnovers for him, 11 to 22 shooting, 3 for 10 on threes, and as aforementioned, 5 for 9 on free throws. Luka, so LeBron had 10 points and 1 assist in the fourth. Luka had 8 points and 2 assists in the fourth. So those 2 guys led the way during that fourth quarter run. But with Luka, just some incredible plays from Luka. So he has the laser lob to LeBron, beautiful back cut from LeBron, on time, on target pass from Luka. He also has he's trapped on the left sideline. The shot clock's winding down. It looks like for a second he's about to throw it up, and you wouldn't blame him because the shot clock's going down. Throws up a pinpoint lob to DeAndre Ayton for a finish. And I don't know, like that's just such a remarkable pass. I don't know how he made that pass because he also didn't look like I rewound it. It was like, I'm just curious, like, what did he kind of do the like no look, like the fake no look pass here? No, he straight up like had his head down, was double teamed, jumped up. I thought he was potentially going to shoot it and just throws the pass to Ayton for a contested lob. So not only was he double teamed, but Ayton was actually contested in the air and he still ends up making it. And then 2 huge threes from Luka late. I mean, he hit a big 3 in the third quarter as LA was sort of in the muck offensively. And so all 3 of his threes, he went 0 for 4 in the first half, ended up going 3 for 6 in the second half. JJ was joking after the game that Luka was saying that he just can't hit a normal 3 right now, but he could hit some of the more ridiculous ones, which he did because there was one play, Lakers are up by 4, 97-93, and Marcus almost turns the ball over. The ball Trey Murphy gets his hand on the ball, but then doesn't collect it, and it caroms off his hand and ends up going to Luka in the corner with the shot clock winding down. Luka throws it up, swish, and LA now, I mean, that was a huge swing there of LA potentially not scoring there and giving New Orleans a chance to cut the lead down to 2 or even 1. But instead, Luka gets the ball in the corner, hits the 3, LA goes up 7. And then the one that has gone viral already where, 2-man game with LeBron and Luka basically hits a fading out of bounds, just insane shot over 2 Pelicans players and LeBron, and then he and LeBron embrace, and it was a really cool moment. So, like, I thought Luka was solid tonight. Outside, like the 3-point shooting continues to be a struggle for him. Outside of that, I thought he took a few too many early, and just was not really in a rhythm with it. But outside of that, they were doubling him so much, and just with how much he has the ball, that there's naturally going to be some level of turnovers. Like 5 is probably a little bit, a smidge too high, but overall 30 points, 10 assists. He was awesome offensively, and also took a huge charge on Derek Queen. That was a big play that the Lakers ended up challenging, and they overturned it. So also some big defensive plays for Luka, and broke up a 3-on-1 fast break as well. So some nice defense from him in terms of the playmaking. Then DeAndre Ayton, 18 points, 11 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, 2 blocks. 9 of 16 shooting, which I looked this up. It was DeAndre's second most field goal attempts of the season and the most since November 3rd. So we're going on over 2 months since DeAndre attempted 16 field goals. Like by his standards, which this is saying something because he still went above 50% but by DeAndre standards, 9 for 16 is actually a bit inefficient because he is such a low to mid 60s% shooter. And tonight, I thought he missed some bunnies in the paint and stripped a couple times and missed a few hook shots, but did have several lobs and had a couple of big plays in the fourth quarter. I think it was like 91-90. Then he hit a couple of little. I think it was a little jumper and then a little hook in the paint to stretch it to 95-90, and that gave LA some separation until eventually. Luka hit the 2 threes. With DeAndre defensively, I would say it was a mixed bag because I thought he had some really good defensive possessions, especially like Derek Queen trying to try him off the dribble, a couple of nice contests against Zion. And one thing I think with DA is like when he can corral you and it becomes more, it's more like he's able to leverage his length on corralling the drive and just contest. If you're going to try him, he has the timing, he has the length, and he's going to block it or alter it. But when it's more like those quick hitting bang bang sequences and DA has to like make defensive decisions in space, that's where I have more, or I see more the limitation from him. And I thought tonight there's a lot of those breakdowns when he was in the vicinity and like not really cleaning those up. And then there was the one that also went viral of just giving up an offensive rebound to Misi on a New Orleans free throw and just basically didn't move and gives up the offensive rebound to Misi. So I think Ayton, it was a nice bounce back performance against Memphis, and he did have some good moments on both sides tonight, but I thought was not finishing as efficiently as as we're accustomed to. And then also I thought defensively had some pretty low effort, low motor moments on that end, which has been a trend with him recently. Then Jake LaRavia, I apologize to Jake LaRavia. I'm going to call this the Jovan Buha social video curse, because for those who follow me on social, every time I put out some type of video, I feel like whatever the video is about, the next game, that thing like doesn't happen or doesn't continue. And so I just did a video about should Jake remain the fifth starter and talking about one of my takeaways from the last game and really building off the last two games. And then Jake, I don't want to say had like a bad game necessarily, but I thought he had a pretty rough defensive game. I thought tonight we really saw some of the limitations with him in terms of his foot speed. Trey Murphy, it was just too quick and athletic for him. And even when he was switched onto guys like Alvarado or Fears or whoever, he just could not hang with those guys. And then also Queen and Zion were able to take him off the dribble or in the post. So I thought it was a pretty relatively rough defensive performance by Jake. Now he did make some big plays in the fourth. He had 2 steals in the final 6 minutes. And he also had that offensive rebound putback jumper. I think now it's all coming back to me. It was like 91-90. Ayton hits the 2 shots in the paint. Then it's 95-90. Then Jake gets the offensive rebound, hits the little fadeaway, 97-90. And then I forgot. I think New Orleans hits a 3. And then, if I'm not mistaken, I think Trey Murphy maybe hits a 3. And then that's when Luka gets the 3 on the next possession, or like the next time the Lakers score is when it pushes it to 100 to 93. But yeah, Jake, like I think he's still a net positive with like the connectivity offensively and the rebounding and having the defensive playmaking chops. But I think the one thing I noted when and have consistently noted when we've talked about Jake as the fifth starter is just I don't know if he's quick enough for some of these matchups, and that's where like Marcus, I don't know if Marcus is quick enough for them either. And Marcus had an interesting game because I didn't think he had a good first half, but then he ends up finishing 13 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 steal, 1 block. Did have 4 turnovers and nearly had that costly turnover that Trey Murphy almost intercepted. But 5 for 10 shooting, 3 for 7 on threes. Hit another shot, foot on the line that ended up being a long 2. But a better shooting performance from Marcus and really hurt New Orleans for helping off of him. But he also struggled with Jeremiah. Like Jeremiah Fears is just too quick for Marcus. And I thought they went away. Like, I don't know what New Orleans is thinking offensively. I felt like they were running some really good stuff in the first half, and then that kind of went away in the second half. They had some moments in the third as well, but felt like they just went away from their offense entirely in the fourth. But Marcus, I thought hit some big shots, made some big plays offensively, and is a steady defensively, but this was also a bit of a tough matchup for him with Fears specifically. And then off the bench, I'm going to touch on Vando with one of my takeaways, so I don't want to speak too much on him yet, but 7 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, 3 for 4 shooting, 0 for 1 on threes, 1 for 2 at the free throw line. Awesome game from Vando. I thought he was the banshee of the game. Jackson, 2 points, 3 rebounds in 16 minutes. Also had a steal and a block. Dalton, 6 points, hit a couple threes, also took a huge charge against Zion Williamson that New Orleans ended up challenging and ended up costing them a timeout. And it was pretty funny to see the Lakers bench react the way that they did when Dalton took that charge. It was like sometimes when it's like the guy who is always working on threes in practice, but usually like a big man, and then he finally shoots a 3 in a game and he makes it and the bench erupts and goes crazy. It's sort of the equivalent of that with Dalton, where it's like, we know Dalton is not known for his defense, but he took a huge charge in this one. I would say like definitely a better second shift than first shift. And overall, he contributed more than I think he has recently. I still think there were the typical defensive breakdowns, and sometimes it feels like he's just sort of out there, but 2 big threes and a big charge. So that was nice to see from Dalton of like, he's had this opportunity here. JJ mentioned playing him in the rotation and giving him a shot. He basically did nothing in the 2 Memphis games. This was like a step in, I would say a mini step, but a step in the right direction nonetheless. And then Nick Smith, I said it after the Memphis game, it's feast or famine with him. It's been really jarring to see, like, he either looks like an all-star or he looks like he's unplayable. It's really been like no in between with Nick Smith. I don't know. He kind of has to play right now because the Lakers are so shorthanded. But I know people in the past have been clamoring for him to play more or for him to play consistently. But I think when he's not contributing offensively, he is a minus defensively. So just it gets like those minutes become a little tough. In terms of stat of the night, I mentioned it at the top. LA held New Orleans to just 10 points through the first 10:44 of the fourth quarter, forced a bunch of turnovers. We're doing a great job cleaning up the glass and keeping them off the offensive glass after they had 8 offensive rebounds in the first half. So really nice defensive performance from LA in the fourth. And then I'm going to rattle through these 3 takeaways and then get into the Q&A. Takeaway number 1 was 3-point regression hits. And we've not often been able to say that for the Lakers, but after going 3 for 17 in the first half, they went 8 for 14 in the second half. And I could almost rattle off every single 3 they hit, right? Because Marcus hit a couple, Luka hit all 3 of his in the second half. LeBron hit a couple. I don't remember if he hit all 3 in the second half or not, but Dalton hit one. Just some big time shot making for LA, and with how good they are offensively in general and how they have been taking care of the ball better recently, only 15 turnovers tonight, which is like on the high end of like still solid. Like you don't really want to go above 15. You want to ideally be in like that. I mean, you want it as low as possible, but ideally maybe like 11 to 13 is a pretty good range turnover wise. But 14, 15, you could probably live with. But with them taking care of the ball relatively well and them typically getting to the free throw line, they did not have a big free throw advantage tonight. Only took 3 more free throws than New Orleans and only took 21 overall, which is a below average night. But despite that, LA won the 3-point battle by 1 and ended up really hitting some big threes in the second half. And I thought that was nice to see. And like we saw it a bit in the Memphis game when LA can make threes and make teams pay for, because New Orleans was selling out on Luka. This was one of the more aggressive game plans we've seen against Luka. They were trapping him at half court. They were completely selling out and forcing LA to play 4-on-3, 3-on-2. And they had some success with that, right? Like some of those doubles led to turnovers, but I thought LA was much better in the second half, figuring out the different ways to attack. And they had some 3-point regression hit at the right time. And sometimes that's what you need to pull out a road win. Then takeaway number 2 is season high in minutes for Vando. And I think that's notable because we've seen a real shift in his role throughout the season and in how much JJ trusts him, because going back to the offseason, when people would have the fifth starter conversation, sometimes people would bring up Vando, and I would bring up, I get it. And, he started on the 2023 team. LA extended him off that, and he is arguably their best defender. And so like you see the argument for it, but based on the way that JJ used him last season and even started with him this season, he clearly was more of an 8th or 9th man in JJ's ideal view of the team. And especially after LeBron returned, remember, I mean, Vando had a bunch of DNP CDs. He had 8 straight DNP CDs and was essentially phased out of the rotation. And it was like, okay, JJ has his full, allotment of players now. He does not trust Vando. He does not believe in Vando. He does not view him as an every night rotation player. But that has really shifted over the last few weeks. And so Vando's previous season high was 28 a couple times. So this is a little bit of semantics here. Like now he played 29 tonight. But I thought he was better than both Jake LaRavia and Marcus Smart. I thought he had some really good possessions against Trey Murphy, and it was beaten sometimes backdoor. And that could be one of his issues is sometimes I think sometimes he's better off the ball than on the ball. And in terms of like being stunting into driving lanes or passing lanes and deflections. And he had a couple of those tonight, but just the energy and playing everywhere. Obviously he's been shooting the ball better. Like it is low volume. It's basically only in the corners, but he's at least becoming more of a threat out there. Like teams it hasn't really changed how teams guard him, but I think you've seen teams shift over a little bit more toward him. Like that they'll still live with a Vando 3, but like 9 straight games now with 20 plus minutes for Vando. And, before that he had only played over 20 minutes in 6 of 16 games. So I think we've seen a real shift in his role. Of course, part of this has been Rui's out, Austin's out, Gabe's out. The Lakers are down several bodies, but I think Vando has earned a certain trust with the coaching staff, with JJ and with the rotation. And I think it's going to be interesting, like with how things have been shifting and how Jake and Marcus have overall been playing as starters over the last few games, with how Vando has been playing off the bench and just his offensive confidence, because I thought it was notable tonight. Like the finishing the last couple games has been much better, and it's a couple of games and it's against 2 like not good defensive teams. But if Vando can cut along the baseline for lobs or for dunks or for layups, like, and then hit the occasional corner 3, like that's pretty much what the Lakers need from him offensively, in addition to all the energy and rebounding and defense, et cetera. So I think Vando is trending in a really positive direction. And when the Lakers get whole here, presumably by the end of the month, I'm really interested to see what JJ's full strength rotation looks like, because I think he's going to go back to, Austin's going to start. There's the whole conversation about who should be the 5th starter. I'm still on the side of Marcus, but I've said if you want to make the case for Jake, I think you can make a strong case for Jake. I think you can make a case for Vando. I just don't think JJ's ready to go there because he's had a couple of opportunities to start Vando and he has chosen not to. And even remember, like he started Dalton over starting Vando, started Nick Smith over starting Vando. So I don't think we're quite there with Vando being a true starting threat, but that I think needs to change. And then the bench rotation, let's just say hypothetically it's Marcus. Okay, now you got Rui, you got Jake, you got Vando, you got Jackson, and then I guess Gabe as like the 10th guy. I don't really see Gabe falling out of the rotation. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all shakes out. Speaking of Gabe, takeaway number 3, before we get into the Q&A, Gabe is likely playing tomorrow versus Spurs, making his return after quite the absence. And Marcus, who got banged up right before the buzzer, walked off the court and said he's good. So looks like Marcus will be available for tomorrow. Also, I mean, one interesting thing is going to be, does LeBron even play tomorrow? I think he's going to, but ESPN reported today that the Lakers are still taking it, and LeBron is still taking it game by game in terms of playing on back-to-backs because LeBron has yet to play in a back-to-back this season. So we'll see what ends up happening tomorrow with his availability. But with all that said, let's get into the Q&A here. Just as a reminder, I'm going to keep this to about an hour, maybe like a little bit longer, but trying to keep it as close to an hour as possible. Your boy is going through it right now. And thank you for the super chat. Is it okay to put a poster of Ayton in the shower? Thank you for the super chat. This might be the most unique question I've gotten. I did get, nothing will top the super chat of someone asked me if I'd rather be in a room with Trump or Westbrook for an hour, which was a very random question. I don't know if anything will ever top the randomness of that, but hey, there's no kink shaming over here. So whatever you're into, if you want to put a poster of DeAndre Ayton in the shower, go for it. To each his or her own. So I support it. 7-Day Sports Pod, thank you for the super chat. LBJ leadership is on display. Rob needs to do right and make a trade for the team. They can win it, need 2 wings and a power big man. I agree that I think LeBron has really stepped up and has been playing awesome lately. I think to your point, the end point here, I hear you. And I think, sure, like I've talked about, they clearly need that 5th starter, 3-and-D wing. They could use another 3-and-D wing off the bench or like another athlete with size off the bench, and specifically in that like 6'6" to 6'9" range, I would say. And then they could also use a more physical, brawny big man. But that's easier said than done in terms of checking all those boxes. And the Lakers just don't have a lot of, not only do they not have a lot of like tradable assets, but they don't have a lot of appealing assets. So they do have the expirings of Rui, Gabe, and Maxey. But the only one of those guys right now that has any value in like a rotation is Rui. I think Gabe is a borderline rotation player and Maxey's not a rotation player. Then you got Dalton, who continues to get opportunities and has not made much of them. You got Adu, who's been injured for most of the past year. And then you have the 1st round pick, which LA is going to be judicious in terms of potentially trading that. And then you have a 2nd round pick and some pick swaps, which aren't very valuable. So I just don't see how you flip those assets into all of those things. I think you can maybe get one of those things, maybe 2, or you could get 2 wings, but it might just be 2 bench wings, right? Like you could get a power big man. It might be like a 3rd string power big man. I don't know if you're getting like real difference makers with those assets right now. I think far and away the thing with the most value is clearly the 1st round pick, but LA's bar for trading the 1st round pick is going to be pretty high. And of the names that have been out there, I think the only players they would seriously consider it for are Herb Jones, Andrew Wiggins, and Dylan Brooks. Anyone else, I don't see them trading the first round pick for. And when you hear like Keon Ellis, Sacramento wants a first round pick, or Ayo DeSumo, they want a first round pick. It's like, that's the gap in the market right now. And unless those teams lower the prices, which is possible, but not guaranteed, the Lakers are in a little bit of a predicament in terms of making like real upgrades to the roster. Andre Miller, 1566. Thank you for the super chat. No one will credit us if we beat San Antonio tomorrow. Haters will make excuses that San Antonio is on a back-to-back. Well, look, people are going to make excuses against the Lakers. That's just how it goes. You make money off hating on the Lakers. We see the people. It's the same culprits over and over again. So that is what it is. But I'll say I will give the Lakers credit if they beat San Antonio tomorrow, because LA's also, like, you can say San Antonio's on a back-to-back, but LA's also on a back-to-back, and they're down 2 starters and 3 rotation players. So, really the only thing you could point to with San Antonio is Wemby's availability. If Wemby doesn't play, or if Wemby, he still likely will be on a minutes restriction. But San Antonio had a stinker performance. They blew the game tonight against Memphis. They were up 10 at the end of the first and then end up losing it by 1. So San Antonio is going to be coming in motivated tomorrow. It'll be a home game for them, but I will give the Lakers credit for beating San Antonio. And even if it's a 1-point win, if it's a 10-point win, doesn't matter to me. Like, beating San Antonio, especially with how San Antonio has been playing recently, like when they've been reasonably healthy, they beat OKC 3 times in 2 weeks. They have looked like, they've probably been the second best team in the NBA over the past month, if not arguably the best team in the NBA over the past month. So I would give LA a lot of credit. Like, to me, again, depending on the context of things, but I think if they beat San Antonio tomorrow, that's their best win of the season straight up. Because I think San Antonio, the team they beat earlier in the season, was not playing as well, did not have De'Aaron Fox yet. Dylan Harper was out. They had not found their groove. This version is a well-oiled machine who's playing really, really well. Number 2 in the West, looks like a contender that's arrived ahead of schedule. I think people viewed them as like a back-end playoff team, not a top 2 or 3 team in the West. So if Lakers beat them tomorrow, I think that's their best win of the season straight up. Jay Spares, thank you for the super chat. Feel better, bro. Flu sucks this year. Total other topic, because it's another bad team, in my opinion. Rich Paul needs to be quiet. It's unprofessional and toxic for the team. Thank you. I've feels like it's getting worse, but no, I'm here and I'm rocking with the late night gang. I don't know any other way after a Lakers game. I got to be careful with what I say and how I present it, but I'll say, a bit surprised by some of the comments that have come out of that show, and causation around the start of that show and the comments about LA not being a contender. That's when LA started to have some of their early December struggles. I think that's interesting, but yeah, it's been a bit surprising to see some of the chatter about the team and around the team. And, I think more recently it was very revealing, in my opinion, that he spoke about the Lakers needing to pick a direction and needing to tell their stars what they're planning on doing. And just simply reading through the tea leaves there, he was clearly implying that they have not told LeBron what their trade plans are and which direction they want to go in terms of if they want to go after it or if they want to stand pat and wait till the summer and when he's off the books and they have more financial flexibility. So yeah, it's been interesting. But I agree that it's probably been a distraction to some extent, and it's not the best look. Chuck Dangler, aka Fang Charlie, Sup Brate LeBron says he wants to uplift Luka. Something haters will deny. Hope you can give the flu the good old 1-2 punch on time for Thursday. Late night gang. Yeah, I mean, I think the LeBron Luka bromance. I'm sure Austin is jealous to a degree with the bromance that they got going on right now. But it's been something to behold. Where I think those two have been in such a great groove together and playing off of each other, both in the 2-man game, but also getting into a certain rhythm of knowing, not your turn, my turn per se, but sort of just based on the flow of the game, based on who's in a certain rhythm, based on the defensive matchups and what LA is running. I think they've just gotten into a really good groove of dissecting the defense and figuring out the pressure point and the entry point into the defense. And sometimes it is as simple as LeBron being in the post or playing bully ball, mismatch hunting. So I've been really pleased with that. I think that's probably been the biggest and most positive development over the last few games. And it's, I think, something that could hopefully carry forward. Fahim, thank you for the question. Thank you for the super chat. This is the most W's Luka's had after 34 games in his career. This year with injuries, roster inconsistency, and poor construction. Hope for health, playoff position, trade deadline, and Luka magic. Roll the dice in playoffs. Yeah, I think that's like really good perspective here in terms of what I have not obviously followed or closely followed Luka's career in terms of his record after 34 games previously, so I was not aware of that, but that's an awesome nugget for you to bring up here. Yeah, I mean, I think the Lakers are in a really good position. Like I think the one thing I want to see, I do want to see some wins against better teams, just because, again, like they're not playing Memphis in round one. They're not playing New Orleans in round one. They're not playing Sacramento in round one. They're probably playing, I mean, right now they'd be playing Minnesota in round one in a rematch from last year, but they're probably playing Denver or Houston or Minnesota in round one. And they are 2-1 against those three teams specifically. So that, they played Minnesota in the beginning of the season. I don't think either team was as, kind of where they're at right now. But they did beat them twice. And there's the Austin game winner game. Just recently played Houston, got their butts kicked, have yet to play Denver. Will probably play Denver without Jokic. So you can't really I'm not going to take, if Luka misses a primetime matchup, I'm not really going to take much out of it, because if the Lakers don't have Luka, it's a completely different ceiling with that team, and it's just not really the Lakers. I'm not going to really take away much from Jokic not playing in Denver, because if the Lakers blow them out, they should blow out Denver without Jokic. And if they didn't have Jokic in a playoff series, they obviously should beat Denver without Jokic. So I those, point being, those are the matchups I'm really focused in on, of how do they fare against the best teams in the West. And then if they play one of those three teams, then in the second round, it's San Antonio or OKC, depending on where they finish. And against those two teams, they're 1-2 right now, with two of the losses being blowouts. So overall, I guess against that group, the top six in the West right now, they're 3-3 with two of the wins coming against, in my opinion, the weakest team of the six, which is Minnesota. So if you look at OKC, San Antonio, Denver, Houston specifically, they are 1-3 against those four teams, who to me are the probably the top four teams in the West right now. So that's all I want to see from the Lakers. The record is great. Obviously, the point differential and net rating are not good. They have the 8th best point differential and 8th best net rating in the conference, which kind of undermines their standing right now as the number 3 team in the West. But assuming they could get to the playoffs healthy and be a top 6 seed and ideally have home court advantage, they are in a good position to advance. the two big things are just like, can they beat the best teams? And I think a follow-up question to that is like, can their defense get to a certain level? We know it could get there in crunch time, but as we've seen against some of these good teams, there won't even be a crunch time if the Lakers are defending the way that they're defending often for like the first 2 or 3 quarters in some of these games, right? Like if they're playing OKC or San Antonio tonight with how they defended in the first 3 quarters, I think they're down 20, not down 7. So still some bad habits they got to clean up. But to your point, despite like the starting group struggling, despite that there's been a viral tweet about like LA ranking bottom 5 in defense, rebounding, bench points, and 3-point shooting. And they're like, how is this team like top 3 in the West despite being bottom 5 in all these categories? They just keep finding ways to win, which is the name of the game. Winning is the name of the game, regardless of how ugly it is. But I do think it is masking over some of their weaknesses that have been exposed in these losses to good teams. And that's where I think tomorrow night, another crack at it of, can you beat San Antonio? Like, you're on the second night of back-to-back, but so are they. And this is your shot to beat one of the best teams in the NBA, a team that just went into your house and kicked your butt coming out of the NBA Cup, quarterfinal situation. This is a chance to get your lick back. Connor Phillips says, thank you for the super chat. Higher difficulty equals higher percentage for Luka shooting. Apparently so. When Luka's taking open catch and shoot threes, I mean, he did hit a couple against Memphis, but when Luka has wide open threes, he's missing them. When Luka is taking a contested 3 in the corner with the shot clock winding down, or a falling out of bounds 3 over 3 players, he makes those. It's Luka magic. I don't know how else to put it. Harry Chinani, thank you for the super chat. Want the starting 5 even when Rui and AR are back. AR will come off bench with min restriction when he's back. If we keep winning, AR won't mind. Rui plus AR off the bench, a game changer for the worst bench. I'm going to actually disagree with one thing here. Well, I don't know for sure if AR is going to come off the bench with a minutes restriction. That is certainly possible, and we've seen that with some guys, like even looking in San Antonio right now. Wemby's coming off the bench with minutes restriction. I actually think Austin would mind, and I do not blame Austin for minding. Like, I know people, I feel like I've had the same Austin conversation like a million times, and I'm sure some people are tired of listening to it. I'm sometimes tired of saying it, but I don't think you can ask a player who, if Austin was not injured right now, I think Austin would be on the All-Star team as a reserve. And there was a point earlier in the season where he was playing at an All-NBA level, and really the only reason that shifted was just because LeBron returned and it affected his usage a little bit, and like his numbers collectively went down a little bit. But that wasn't necessarily like him playing worse or him not being able to sustain that. We saw, like, look at the Toronto game with no Luka and what he does in the Toronto game when he has the ball more. So I understand in theory that like it is better to split up the big 3 and keep them staggered and reduce the minutes. But Austin, he's the 11th leading scorer in the NBA. The 11th leading scorer in the NBA does not come off the bench. That is just like not, it's just not a thing, right? So that's where and he's also in a contract year. And I just think if LA tries to make him a bench player, I think I've said this before, I think you're pushing him out the door. And if that's the direction the Lakers want to go in, that's a totally different conversation. But if you are going to make him a bench player in a contract year, I think what you are setting up is Austin just leaving in the summer and signing elsewhere on a max deal. And the downside there, in addition to just straight up losing him and not having that piece on your roster, is like obviously losing him for nothing and then just losing that asset. So I think I actually do think Austin would mind. And I know he's a team first guy, and I think he generally tries to put the team first in most scenarios, but this is a scenario where I just think he's straight up too good to be coming off the bench. And that's why I continue to say I think it's more of a 5th starter conversation here of it's going to be the big 3 and Ayton. Who's the 5th guy? I think it clearly should not be Rui, and I think this stretch has further confirmed what we already knew in terms of the lineup data. Like the current starting group has been pretty good on both sides of the ball. That I think indicates like it probably should be Marcus or Jake, but Austin's not coming off the bench. Sarah Talks Ball, thank you for the super chat. How do we feel about the return of Gabe tomorrow? Well, I know people are not thrilled about it, and I totally get it. I would say that for as infuriating as Gabe can be, I do think he's a better player than both Dalton and Nick Smith. So, and certainly at least a more stable player. Like, yes, Nick Smith can get hot and drop 15, 20, 25 as he's done a few times this season. But then he also has the performances like tonight where he goes 0 for 3, has more turnovers and fouls than he does points, rebounds, and assists combined, right? So Nick Smith, again, is feast or famine. And when he's feasting, it's awesome. It's a show. When he's not, it's pretty rough. And you factor in like the defensive limitations and it just gets like, you know, he is more, in my opinion, still, I mean, he's a two-way guy, just he's literally not even on the roster, but he is more of like a back-end roster player in general, in my opinion, or a two-way guy, but he's not a rotation player. Dalton, I think, is clearly not a rotation player because he doesn't even give you the Nick Smith 15, 20, 25 unless it's in garbage time. So I would say Gabe would slide in. Like right now it's the starters plus Vando plus Jackson, and then there's a bit of a drop-off. I think Gabe slides in as the 8th guy, and then once you get Austin and Rui back, Rui first, then it brings it to 9, and then ultimately to 10, and then I think LA has its 10-man rotation with whatever the starters end up being, plus some combination of Vando, Jackson, Gabe, and then again, 2 of Rui, Marcus, and Jake. But so I guess I think it's fine for now because I think they are at the line of like you're probably playing guys in the rotation who shouldn't be playing, especially against like thinking about Dalton and Nick Smith versus San Antonio tomorrow and thinking about how those guys match up with Fox and Castle and Harper. Like it's 2 different beasts in terms of that is arguably the best backcourt. Probably the best 3-man backcourt. Like I would give the Lakers the best backcourt with Luka and Austin as like a starting backcourt. But once you add in like the 3rd player, I think that trio is probably the best overall. And then even with the Lakers trio or Lakers duo, it's kind of weird because Luka's a forward defensively. He's not a guard defensively. So like the Spurs have 3 true guards, and that's a different animal that I don't love Gabe against them either, but I do like Gabe better than Nick Smith and Dalton in that matchup. So I think it does help for that matchup. Ideally, you have Austin and Rui, and you don't even need to play Gabe, or he plays a little bit, but that's not the situation LA is in right now. Zach Wan, thank you for the super chat. I know we have an imbalanced roster, and some guys are forced to play a role beyond their job, but JJ's rotation is concerning. DK and Nick Smith on the floor together, red flag. Thank you for bringing this up. I completely agree. I feel like after I praised JJ with the recent rotation of and him balancing it out with like 2 defenders, 2 offensive players, and a center, he has been doing the opposite where he's having these lineups with 3 offensive players and then 3 defenders. And the Dalton Nick Smith minutes collectively, I think, have been rough. Both against Memphis and New Orleans. Also because I think it was like, I want to say it was like those 2, LeBron, Vando, and Jackson. So you have 2 non-spacers next to LeBron muddying up the geometry of the floor. And then you have 2 subpar backcourt defenders in DK and Nick Smith. So yeah, I think you could play one of those guys. I mean, obviously, like they have to play one of those guys just based on who's available, but one, not both. I don't really get the thinking from JJ there. Andre Miller, thank you for the super chat for this team. maybe we should count and ones as threes. Hey, that's the old school way of getting 3 points, and this team's really good at it. Between Luka, LeBron, Austin, DA, Jake, they have plenty of guys who can get and ones and finish through contact. So it's a good one. Old school. Harry Chinani, thank you for the super chat. Which team wins the East this season? Philly healthy again with Embiid coming to form. Can't count out Boston. They're right in the mix. It's a good question. I was listening to Zach Lowe earlier today and his East breakdown. I largely agree. I think New York for me is the favorite, but I don't feel like great about it. I don't think there's some juggernaut that is unbeatable. I would probably go my top 6 in the East would probably be New York 1, Detroit 2, Boston 3, Cleveland 4, Orlando 5, Philly 6. With Philly's the toughest one to project just because Philly, you could argue for as high as like 2 or 3. It's just I have zero confidence Joel Embiid's going to be healthy. And if you told me Joel Embiid's going to be healthy and playing the way he's been playing recently, they have a shot against anybody in the East in a 7-game series. But based on the last like half decade plus, there's no assurance that he's going to be healthy. Cleveland, I still give like a little bit, like Cleveland versus Orlando and Philly, I give them a little bit of the edge there just based on the track record with that group, at least in terms of they've been good, but not good enough. But they obviously have not had a great season. And then Boston, I think Boston versus Detroit's really interesting because based on the core, you could talk yourself into Boston, like with the pedigree and whatnot. I think a big thing there is just what happens with Tatum. And like if Tatum comes back and looks even like 70 to 80% of himself, that's a real factor that I think could propel Boston to being even number 2 or number 1. But I think they almost certainly have to have Tatum back at a certain level to ascend higher than like number 3. One big thing with them is they dominate the possession game between threes and turnovers and offensive rebounds. Like they are just killing you in on the margins and in the possession game and the math game. And then Detroit is just unproven. Like I think Detroit, it's going to probably be the typical young ascending team season of like they lose in the semifinals or maybe even conference finals at some point to just a more veteran proven team, as reductive as that sounds. So I think New York should be the favorite. Can they do it? Can they be good enough defensively? Can they stay healthy enough? There's a lot of questions. I truly think there's probably 6 teams that could win the East right now. But with all due respect to Toronto, who I currently have 7th, I think that the top 6, any of those teams could win the East. Kevin, thank you for the super chat. Need to get rid of JJ. He's switching when Zion is a pick and roll ball handler. At this point, I prefer Darvin. I know there's been that sentiment out there. So JJ talked about he switched some of the off-ball coverages in the second half and specifically the fourth quarter. Also switched to 1 through 5 switching. They're just in a tough spot right now because they just don't have the foot speed like that. That was it. Was going to be one of my big takeaways coming off this game. If they had lost, was just going to be the overall foot speed and athleticism again was on display in terms of like Jake against Zion or Trey Murphy or Marcus against those guys, or even Vando against some of those guys. Like the Lakers are just at, and then Jeremiah Fears and his speed, Jose Alvarado and his speed. Like the Lakers are just often at some sort of speed and or athleticism disadvantage against multiple players at multiple times a game. And so switching is one of the tactics to try to keep the opponent in front of you, but LA can botch those switches. And I think that there was plenty of that with Zion. Like he was splitting the switches several times tonight and getting downhill, and it was either leading to layups or driving kicks. And high percentage looks for New Orleans. So I still prefer JJ to Darvin. I think if if Darvin was coaching this team, it would be, I think, Austin would be coming off the bench, which would be a good thing for some people. But I think the rotation would be all out of sorts, and it wouldn't really make sense. But I do think Darvin was an underrated tactician, and I think that's gotten lost in some of. I thought he actually was good with some of the details. I think he just really missed the bigger picture at times. And but to your point, like, I think JJ's in a tough spot because they just don't have the personnel to really chase and fight around screens. And even their best defenders, looking at Marcus and Jake and Vando, are like not great screen navigators and chasers off ball. So they're just in sort of a tough spot with some of their defensive options. Ryan Lucas, thank you for the super chat. Can't be top seed in the West and not make moves. And I think this is a good point that you're making here, because I think this is so we talked about earlier, right? Like of just how the season's trending and LA still winning despite some of the metrics not being the best or not being favorable compared to the top of the West, which has been a talking point basically all season. But I think that the biggest thing to LA winning, in addition to just giving them a little bit of margin for error if at some point they suffer a bigger injury or go through another injury spell at some point, or they go on a slump, like the schedule is going to get tougher in January. It's not as tough in terms of opponent, but look at February and March, it gets a lot tougher. So at some point, the Lakers are going to go through another skid. They're going to go through another rough patch. It's just inevitable. It's the ebbs and flows of a season. But they've built up some leeway here. They've built up some ground with them and the middle to bottom part of the West. But the other part of this, especially heading into the trade deadline, we are officially less than a month away from the trade deadline. Can't believe it. It's, time's flying. Being a top 2 or 3 seed in the West, and that, I mean, if they beat San Antonio tomorrow, they will leapfrog them into being number 2. But being a top 2 or 3 seed in the West right now, that puts a lot of pressure on Rob and the front office to make a move, because if they had continued this slide that they had been on, and let's say they lost the last 2 games, they don't make the comebacks, they lose in the fourth quarter. You lose every game in the fourth quarter, but like they don't make the rally in the fourth quarter. They end up losing the games. All of a sudden, right? Like let's just play the hypothetical out here. They're 21-13, which would put them at 6th in the West. They'd be a little bit ahead of Phoenix, and they'd be a little bit behind Minnesota. If they stay on that trajectory, that's a different conversation of if you're on like the play-in mix, and it is so jumbled that there's an element of like eye of the beholder here. But if you are in that like 6-7 mix versus being in the top 2-3, that optically that does put some pressure on the front office to make a move to further invest in the team. So I agree. I think if they can maintain this, now if they lose tomorrow to San Antonio, all of a sudden they drop back to, I believe they drop back to 5th. So the margins right now are very close, and they are a couple of, a 2 or 3 game losing streak, or like losing 3 of 5 away from dropping to 5th or 6th in the West. So they got to be careful with that. But if they can stay top 2 or 3, totally agree. That puts a lot of pressure on the front office to invest. Kevin, thank you for the super chat. Allen's salary goes up a lot next year. Trade Rui for him. Cavs get off $90 million for next 3 years and more shooting. Lakers get a very good rim protector. I'm going to look at, I don't even know if it's legal for if that trade's legal. I'm quickly going to look it up from my browser. I think the Lakers would have to throw, like, they are getting off the money, but Lakers side, that is, I like Jared Allen. I don't love Jared Allen. That is a big contract to tie yourself to. And like, I do have concerns about him I mean, he's in a situation right now where like it is tailor made to his strengths in terms of having a couple of high level scoring guards and playmaking guards, and then another defensive player of the year, perennial all defense guy next to him. And it feels like even with that, he's still not, I think he's been trending down overall in terms of like the last couple of years. So I will look at this quickly to see if it's even legal. Because LA would be taking on a couple. So the trade fails. You have to cut 1.7 from LA. So let's see if we could add in Dalton. Send Dalton to Cleveland. Does that work? Also, I want to do a trade mailbag. I think that would be fun. You guys send in a bunch of trades, and then especially for the people who don't like when we talk trades. So it works with Dalton. You could do Rui and Dalton for Jared Allen. It's just a lot of money to commit to him, and I don't know if I feel great about Jared Allen as the center. Like, I think there's a little bit of like he feels like a guy who could be pushed around a little bit, a little too frequently. Like the rebounding has dipped. It has been on a downward trajectory. The shot blocking has been on a downward trajectory. The offense has been on a downward trajectory. Not finishing the ball as well, or not finishing as well, not shooting the ball as well, not as efficient at the basket or from 2-point range. He's 27, going to be 28 in April. To be honest, I think I'd rather have DeAndre Ayton on like a $15 million contract than Jared Allen on a $30 million contract, despite Allen being the better defender and rim protector. But I also don't think Cleveland, if Cleveland does this trade, they're basically admitting they don't think they have a shot to come out of the East. And I don't think Cleveland's at that point yet either. Andre Miller, thank you for the super chat. We're 23-0 when leading after the third and 13-0 in the clutch. Yeah, I mean, the Lakers close at an incredibly high level, and they basically don't blow games. They don't blow leads. Well, okay, they do blow leads, but they often make up for it. Like some of these clutch wins have certainly been them blowing a lead that ended up going into a clutch situation that they then closed it out. But those are both great numbers that you want to see. If you're in a close game, you want to win it. If you have the lead going to the fourth, you want to win it. So definitely notable numbers there. Norma Maldonado Buha, thank you for the super chat, aka my mom. Thank you for your support. Remember to please hit the like button. Yes, let's get those likes up for those in the chat right now. Okay, it looks like we got about 6 or 7. I see what I did there. We actually got more. We got 8 or 9 super chats, so I'm going to go through these and then wrap. I was trying to keep it to an hour because your boy's got a brutal headache right now. But I'm going to go through the super chats and then I will we'll be wrapping. Arno the Capo, thank you for the super chat. Plinka will not make any major moves this trade deadline. He will give us the next offseason. We'll be more flexible and aggressive. BS again. It's certainly possible. And the flip side to the whole, again, there's a lot of eye of the beholder in all this stuff. You could also flip it, and I could see him potentially saying, if they are the 2 or 3 seed, saying, hey, we got a good thing going here. We don't want to mess with this. You don't want to tip over the apple cart, right? Like things are going well. And I don't agree with that because I think you ideally would like to see this team have more convincing wins, beat better teams, have a better point differential, have a better net rating. And I think the only way to do that is going to be adding 2 to 3 better defenders and athletes into the rotation and the lineup. And that is making over some part of the starting group and the bench. But the only thing I will defend with him is that he does have his hands tied to a degree in terms of just not having the best cards to play at the table. And also this not being the best market right now in terms of who's actually available. And there are not, there's a few damaged stars available in terms of their perception and their value. And then there's a lot of role players who people are asking for the moon for, like a Herb Jones and or Phoenix saying Dylan Brooks is untouchable. Like that's the market he's going to have to deal with. But if it comes out that he was not willing to move the first, or like we get the insight into what was potentially out there, or we see another team trades for Herb Jones and they give up a first that maybe even is worse than the Lakers projected first, then that's a different conversation. And then we could have a certain level of criticism there. But I would not be surprised, because that's been the MO the last few years, has been kicking the can down the road and let's sell in the fan base on the future. That is the consistent messaging. Hale, thank you for the super chat. AR might be a better player, but I think Trey Murphy is a better fit on a Luka-led Lakers team. That being said, AR and Gabe for Murphy, and in a separate deal, Dalton and heavily protected first for Keon Rui off the bench. I really like Trey Murphy. There was a point, I mean, going back to the offseason when people were bringing him up as a trade target, a trade target for AR. I would say that was someone I would consider for AR. I think AR has been clearly the better player this year. And I think that there's a couple things here. One, I think Trey's gotten better defensively, but I think because people look at his size and his frame, I think there's a little bit of wish casting on what type of defender he actually is. And I think he could be a decent defender to, like, an above average defender in certain scenarios, but I don't think he's always an above average defender. And I think people see like 6'8", 220, 225 wing and just sort of assume that, when I don't think that's the reality of who he is defensively. And I think that the reason I bring that up is because in theory, that would be a big boost, would be like, hey, you're replacing AR with this 6'8" wing. But for example, I don't think he's good enough to be like your primary wing stopper in a lineup. I think you would still have a bit of a gap there where it's like, okay, you have Murphy, you have spot X that you still need a primary defender, and then you have Luka. The other thing I've talked about is I do think Luka functions best with having another secondary playmaker and shot creator of a certain caliber. I think that caliber is above Trey Murphy's caliber in terms of, yes, as a scorer and a shooter, he's awesome and he continues to develop, but he is not the ball handler of an AR, of a Kyrie, of a Brunson. He's not a guy you want to necessarily run the offense through in high leverage moments. So that is where I think that would still be a whole. I've talked about this before when people have mentioned recently, like Herb. I mean, even Herb and Trey for Austin. It's like, okay, well, if you're going Herb, Trey, and Luka, you need a certain amount of ball handling then at the 4 or at the 5. Otherwise, if it's just basically Luka and not much other ball handling and playmaking, I think there's a limitation there offensively. And I think part of what has worked so well with this Lakers team and has worked well for Luka in the past offensively, just to be clear, offensively, we're not talking defensively, has been having those other guys who can operate on the weak side and attack and get downhill and make plays and run pick and roll and take some of that burden off of Luka, or at least run the show when Luka's off the floor. I don't think Trey Murphy is that caliber of player or that caliber of ball handler and passer. I think he has made some strides, but to me, he's way more of a secondary guy than a primary guy. And that's okay because he's an elite shooter and he is athletic and he's got a certain frame that is valuable. But I'll say, I don't think the Lakers would do this. I do like Murphy though. I'm not going to lie. And seeing what he did tonight, like, I don't know if judging him killing the Lakers is the best, they're a bottom 5 defense or bottom 6 defense. Like, I don't want to take away too much from that. But yeah, Dalton and heavily protected first for Keon, I like if you did a top 20 protected first, which basically is like, if it's in the lottery or in the teens, you obviously keep it. But if it's a late first, you give it up. I would be open to that. And then I'm also open to Rui off the bench. Harry Chinani, thank you for the super chat. JJ called out the team recently for not knowing the plays or ATOs and even some of the defensive schemes. That's a bit concerning, don't you think? Yes, it is concerning. And there were several mistakes that first Memphis game. A couple of which, I mean, I forgot who did. I think Crane just might have done a breakdown of it, of like who botched the 7 mistakes. It was all over the place. It wasn't just one person. I think Dalton did have a couple of them, and Dalton continues to be called out for not remembering stuff. And I think that's a barrier for entry as a rotation guy, is like, if you can't remember plays, that's just, you got to be able to remember plays. But yeah, I mean, things have been a little weird lately. I don't know, like some of the quotes from JJ, some of the quotes from DeAndre Ayton. Jake had the quote a week and a half ago or so, right after Christmas, with there's a bit of a disconnect right now with the group. There's been some interesting quotes coming out of the locker room, but yeah, I mean, you can't not be remembering ATOs and defensive schemes. Like, it's okay to have a mistake here and there. That's going to happen, but it's been happening a little bit too consistently for the Lakers. Lakers fan 466. Jovan, what about calling up? Thank you for the super chat. Jovan, what about calling up Kobe Buffkin? He is balling with South Bay. Replace him with Drew Timmy. This is something we talked about last stream, where I was asked about Kobe Buffkin, and I'm open to him being on a 2-way, and Drew Timmy is the guy that I would take off of the 2-way. I know LA likes having a big on the 2-way, and even go back to last year, they had Koloko and Jemison. But Drew Timmy, for as skilled and gifted as he is offensively, I just don't think he has the defensive capabilities to be an NBA big. And especially for this specific team, I don't see a scenario in which he really makes sense. Like I'd rather even play Maxi Kleba over him, which I think shows you the state of where I think Drew Timmy's defense is at. So yeah, I would in a heartbeat replace Kobe Buffkin with or replace Drew Timmy with Kobe Buffkin and give Kobe a shot and see, like, maybe he's better than Dalton and Nick Smith. I would not rule that out. Angelo Torres, thank you for the super chat. How'd you rate Herb tonight? When considering his price, not sure if I fully understand the appeal as much. Don't see the high motor, shooting, or athleticism. Good question. So I think he's had two of his 3 games against the Lakers have been bad shooting performances, if I'm not mistaken. No, he didn't play in the other one. But the one in LA on November 14th, he went 4 for 14. I thought he did play. He did play in the one in LA, in New Orleans, I thought. Oh yeah, okay, sorry. That I was reading it from the Lakers perspective, but that's actually from the New Orleans perspective. So yeah, that's the one in New Orleans. Yeah, he went 4 for 14, and then tonight 1 for 9. He has not shot the ball well against the Lakers. That is for sure. 1 for 9 overall tonight, 1 for 6 on threes, and then in that previous game, 4 for 14, 1 for 8 on threes. So he has 2 for 14 on threes against the Lakers this season, and overall 5 for 23. I actually thought he did a solid job against Luka. Like, Luka's going to drop 30 basically against anybody. There's no one that, outside of the OKC game, when I thought they were able to rattle Luka a bit, Luka is as steady as they come, and Luka is a walking 30 plus every single night. So I don't even hold that against Herb Jones. And then also, Luka, he hits 2 Luka magic threes. He gets the 2 free throws late. So like up through like the first 3 quarters, I thought Herb had done a pretty solid job against Luka, and a lot of the times they're able to spam certain actions and get Herb off of Luka and attack the bigs. And that's a real mismatch for Luka, where those guys, like, they just have a very defensively limited front court outside of Misi. But I thought defensively he was solid. Now, to your point about the shooting in the offense is a real concern. There's some Marcus Smart there. Like, he's not he's not the turnover machine or like head scratching decision making machine that Marcus Smart is, but there is a little bit of he doesn't shoot it as well as you want. The interesting thing is like he's gone through different phases this year where going into tonight he was shooting 34% for his career. He's shooting 36% on threes, but he was shooting above 40% on threes for a while this season. And then it really tailed off right before he got injured. And then he came back and played well. Then he got injured again. I thought he nearly got injured in this game. If you guys remember, he ended up exiting with like a couple minutes left in the third quarter. And he did ultimately return. But I mean, I'll say this. I don't think he's worth 2 first-round picks. I still think that I think he's a really, really good defender who I think in the Lakers system, and if you think about some of the shots that, like if you put him in the Vando role, which I think starting as like the Vando role, like I think he could basically do what Vando does. He's not the rebounder that Vando is, but he is a better offensive threat in terms of the cutting, the attacking off the dribble. He's got more offensive chops than Vando does. I mean, he averages 10 points a game, but yeah, I mean, he's not had the best auditions, I guess, against the Lakers. I think the motor is there. The shooting was not there. I think the motor and athleticism are there, but I don't think he's worth 2 first-round picks. I think a first-round pick, especially like not all first-round picks are created equally, for one, but also 2, he's worth a first-round pick in the context of if you are LA and you're offering Rui or you're offering Gabe and Maxey, that doesn't really move the needle for New Orleans. So it's like you need to incentivize, you need to entice New Orleans to take on those contracts or to get off the Herb contract. So that's where the first round pick is the carrot. So would it be great if Dalton Connect had a certain amount of value, or even Adu had a certain amount of value, and you could flip that for Herb? Sure, that would be awesome. But that's not the situation the Lakers are in. And if it is some sort of package around like Rui as the base, I do think Herb is a much more impactful player overall and fits better for both what the Lakers need and just in like a winning environment as a high-level defensive wing. Kevin, thank you for the super chat. If Brooks averaged 4 more rebounds, I'd trade AR for him. I get, again, people are going to want to trade AR for wings. I will continue to say the Lakers are only going to trade AR if they think they're getting the better player. I don't think they're going to, for as good as Brooks has been, I don't think he's been as good as AR. I also think he has a bit of a history to a degree in Memphis. Like, he changed the culture around in Memphis and Houston, but I also think he certainly wore out his welcome in Memphis. I think, wore it out a little bit in Houston at times. Not even as much with his personality. I think, honestly, with the shot selection, he would sometimes hijack the offense in a bad way. And I think would... Now, he's having a career year. He's having a career shooting year. So I don't know if this is you can count on this Dillon Brooks moving forward or for the foreseeable future, but I do like him. I think if there was a way to trade him and not give up AR, I would do that in a second. Also, I would say this. I think Phoenix would trade Brooks for AR. I think that is, I think that's a lie. Just also, like, Matt Ishbia is not going to come out and say, yeah, we're going to trade Dillon Brooks for AR. Like, no owner would say that. McLean, thank you for the super chat for tomorrow. Since we beat OKC, we have been playing down to our opponent, not playing as good as we should. As a Spurs fan, hope we bounce back against y'all. Okay, so this is from a Spurs fan. I was confused for a second because I was like, the Lakers definitely did not beat OKC. I don't know what you're talking about, but now it makes sense. Well, I appreciate you tuning in as a Spurs fan, and I appreciate the super chat. That is some good context. And to that point, if we pull up the Spurs schedule here, so after the last OKC win, they lost to Utah, they lost to Cleveland, They beat New York, beat Indiana, lost to Portland, lost to Memphis. So they've lost 4 of 6. And I mean, the New York win was a good win. And yeah, then like losing to Utah, Portland, and Memphis is not great. But we'll see. I mean, like I said, they had a horrible shooting performance tonight. And with the Lakers shooting luck, it's the Spurs might have a big night tomorrow night. Steven, thank you for the super chat. Possible to get Kessler in free agency this offseason? It is possible, but I think the price is going to be high. I don't think that he's someone who, to me, is probably going to be a 20 plus, if not 25 plus. Now, the one way he might not be is if the market is just scared off and Utah is able to get that price down. But if you look at the guys, like I'll just say this straight up, I'd rather have, if Jared Allen's making $30 million, I think Walker Kessler should easily be making $30 million. And I think Walker Kessler is a better player than Jared Allen. So I don't know if he's going to get $30 million, but he's going to get at least 20. So point being, I think it's going to be a relatively big number that, depending on what the Lakers situation is financially in terms of what happens with LeBron, what happens with Rui, what happens with DA, there's some questions there that will determine their flexibility and cap space. But I would love Kessler. Kessler would be a home run if they could get him. Rich, is it panic mode for OKC? Looks like they've been exposed. They are going through it right now. And one of the big things with them so they're 6-6 in their past 12. They are 22nd in offensive rating, and they're really struggling from deep. And it's been a lot of loading up the paint against Shea, against Chet, against J-Dub, and daring the supporting cast to beat them with Dort and Caruso and Wallace and Wiggins and those guys not shooting the ball well lately, and then them turning the ball over a little bit more than usual, but also not winning the margins as much. So I don't think it's panic mode. What I do think, and this is another thing the Lakers should factor in here as they try to evaluate how they want to move at the trade deadline, is I think it's shown like they're not infallible. They bleed. They are human. They are, as I have an earthquake on my desk, they are human and they are beatable. Now, I think you ideally need a certain roster build or certain style to beat them. I don't think it's a coincidence that the teams that if we look at the 6-6 stretch, they've lost to San Antonio 3 times, Minnesota once, Phoenix once, and Charlotte once. Now, the Charlotte one was really out of character, 27-point blowout loss, second out of a back-to-back, but still they have tended to beat up the bad teams. But San Antonio and Phoenix, and even to a degree Minnesota, those teams all have a certain level of athleticism and speed and physicality. The Lakers have seen that firsthand, and the Lakers have lost in blowouts to all 3 of those teams in terms of San Antonio, OKC, and Phoenix. So I think it's interesting that like those are the team, like the teams that are giving the Lakers the biggest problems this year, like those have been the teams that have beat up on each other. And because they can also give each other problems. The issue for the Lakers is they do not have the defense of San Antonio or Phoenix or Minnesota. They do not have the athletes of those teams. They do not have the speed or athleticism of those teams. So that's where if you're going to play slower, if you're not going to be as good defensively, if you're not going to consistently win the margins, that's where for the Lakers specifically against OKC, I think it's not like, I don't know how well LA can actually exploit their weaknesses based on at least what we've seen this season. But I think it should, like for everyone in the West, I would be like, hey, like if I'm Denver, I'm feeling much better about this. If I'm Houston, if I'm the Lakers, if I'm Minnesota, if I'm San Antonio, I'm like, hey, if I make the right move at the deadline and I get healthy and I get into a certain rhythm, I can beat these guys in 7. Like I just need the wrong, shooting slump from their supporting cast, which was a big trend in their championship run. They would go through these, cold spells and look very pedestrian offensively. Like, I mean, that's their weakness right now is the offensive end of it is very much, can Shea carry them to a certain degree? Then do they get a certain amount from J-Dub and Chet? And then can the supporting cast hit shots? And their supporting cast can be very up and down in that regard. Colby, thank you for the super chat. Luka played some off ball tonight with LeBron, and even Marcus being the primary ball handler at times. Thoughts on that? I like it. Takes pressure off 77. Yeah, I mean, this has been a recent trend over the last handful of games. The Lakers have been progressively playing Luka off the ball more. They did that against Memphis as well. I like it too. I think one of LA's best actions this season is the wide pin down with Luka coming off. It's empty corner, so it'll typically be Jackson or DeAndre setting a screen for Luka. Luka comes up from the corner, curls off, and then he can get downhill. He could also, depending on how the defense plays it, get the guy on his hip, and then that allows him to do the, kind of put the guy in jail and then maybe draw a foul or get downhill. And then, or if they're going to blitz that, if they're going to try to double or trap him, then he could throw the lob or make a little pocket pass to the big who theoretically is rolling or diving into some space there. So I really like Luka off the ball. Of course, like Luka's going to have the ball a certain amount, and Luka pick and rolls, if nothing else, other than like as a decoy, like I it's been mind boggling, and I get it to a degree because these teams aren't as good defensively looking at Sacramento, Memphis, and New Orleans. But there's been a recent blueprint of how to beat the Lakers, and it has been playing the Luka DA or Austin DA or LeBron DA or whatever, pick and rolls 2v2 and being in a drop with your rim protector and not allowing the driving kicks and forcing it into a 2v2 action where ideally you can rear view contest or force contested runners or floaters or force a drive, and then they're trying to drive and kick, but everyone's in place, and that creates some of those turnovers that lead to transition opportunities. Phoenix did that. San Antonio did that. Detroit did that. Houston did that. Those teams, Houston and Detroit mixed in some blitzing and trapping as well, but teams that have had success against the Lakers recently and beaten them have been able to do that. The selling out against Luka is a losing strategy, in my opinion. Like, yes, sometimes it can force him into some turnovers and it could create transition opportunities. But if you're selling out against Luka, I think LA's gotten so good in those 4-on-3, 3-on-2s that they are consistently getting layups and lobs and back cuts and kick out threes. And it's like, I think that's a losing strategy against LA that for some reason teams continue to employ, and we see it might work for a little bit. It might work for a quarter, a half, or even 3 quarters, but they eventually break the defense. And I think that's what you saw tonight, especially in that fourth. So point with that is like Luka needs to be on the ball to a certain degree. That is his superpower. That is like, he is one of the best on ball scorers and shot creators we've ever seen. But I also think he's putting him off the ball does create these different wrinkles and dynamics within LA's offense. And then I think it's also like it almost sometimes forces him into situations where he's either choosing to go downhill or he's in catch and shoot spot up situations. And both of those, I think, can be a break from his typical offensive rhythm and also sort of force him into 2 of his more efficient scoring types, where I love Luka getting downhill. Like if the entire offense was just Luka get downhill for 90 possessions, I would sign up for that, because Luka is a 60% 2-point shooter and draws fouls and gets to the rim or gets into the paint and has one of the best floater and runner games in the league. I also really like Luka as a catch and shoot guy. And that's been an area that he's gotten better at over the last couple of years. Has not been as strong this year, but it is an area that he's still pretty good in. And we saw against Memphis, he cashed a couple of those. So yeah, I totally agree. I like Luka playing off the ball more. And then last one here from Pizza Delivery before we wrap. Thank you for the super chat. Is it fair to say after the Westbrook trade, the Lakers have become overly cautious in making the wrong trade? But we're ending on a high note. We are remembering one of the darkest times in NBA history. Yes, this is something I've been on when talking about the mindset of the front office. They have become, I think, overly cautious is an appropriate term here. They have been reluctant to trade. I brought this up probably a couple months ago, a month ago, 2 months ago. Since the Westbrook trade, they've only traded 2 first-round picks, one to get off Russ and one in the Luka trade. Otherwise, they have not traded any other first-round picks. So we're going on 5.5 years up to this point, and we'll see what happens. If they don't make a first-round pick trade at this deadline, it's going to go into year 6, or I guess year 5, whatever. 5 years since they have traded multiple first-round picks, and over that stretch, they only traded first in like very obvious scenarios. You were gonna have to always trade a first to get off Russ. It was a terrible contract. He was a terrible fit. He was a below average player when he was with the Lakers, and it was a toxic situation. They needed to get out of it. So they waited it out and got a better situation in terms of not having to attach 2 first round picks, which was originally the projection, but they still had to attach a first. It was very obvious. Then the Luka trade, of course you give up a first for Luka. And also in that one, they were able to keep a second first out of it, which I still will never understand. Like, you could have thrown in Austin and another first, and Dallas still would have lost the trade, but it would have at least made a little bit more sense of, okay, now Austin's popping in Dallas. You got 2 firsts out of it. It's a little bit more defensible, but the version of the trade that actually happened obviously made absolutely no sense. But other than that, they have not wanted to trade first round picks. And I mean, I also think it's worth noting that they have not made a trade in the offseason in the past 3 off seasons. So they kind of like, my issue, or one of my issues with the front office, has been this notion that they like building the team in season. And the issue with that is then you lose continuity and you have like a 30-game runway to the playoffs to figure things out. And then when they lose, then they say, well, hey, we rebuilt the team in season. We need another season. And it kind of gives them this like built-in cover of why they underperformed potentially if they do underperform. So yeah, I think that there's been that was a real turning point for like this iteration of the franchise. I think with how the front office operates, I think with how the front office and Clutch operate together, that was a turning point, and that dynamic and that relationship, I think they were much closer, and it was much more of a partnership with LeBron and Clutch pre-Westbrook trade than post-Westbrook trade. I think that's undeniable. There was a lot of finger pointing and the blame game after that whole situation, and you could talk to 5 different people and get 5 different perspectives on who was at fault, who wanted what, why this went this way, this went that way. But yeah, they have been very cautious over the last few years, and I get it to a degree, but I think they botched the end of the LeBron AD era. I think it's tough to say they underperformed because they won a championship, but with how promising that looked when it first started and winning a championship in year 1, for them to only advance out of the first round one more time in the final 4 years. And frankly, if they had just kept AD last year and not made the Luka trade, who knows if they even make the playoffs, but let's just say they do. They almost certainly lose in round 1 with AD there instead of Luka. And AD wasn't even healthy at the end of the season. So, or, like barely got healthy back in time for like the play-in mix. So you would have had like an AD coming off an injury, like hoping he could be ready for the playoffs. So I think that they mismanaged that. And now it's not, it was a good offseason, I would say, based on their assets, but they could have done more, undeniably. They could have traded a first. They could have gotten off the expirings. They chose not to. now there's the pressure in the next month. Can they do that? And can they maximize this roster? Because Luka's about to be 27, and that is still very young. He's not even technically in his prime, but you don't want to mess with that. You do not want to be in 2029 looking at like we've gotten out of the first round one time with Luka. That would be a disaster. So they got to figure it out, and they have about a month to do it. But appreciate you guys. Shout out to the late night gang. I said I was going to go an hour, and I went an hour 40. That's what we do here. But I'll be back tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. with Jason and Trevor for Lakers Collective. Then I will be back later in the evening after Lakers Spurs. Then Thursday back for another Lakers Collective. Then back for another Beyond the Block, my national show where I talk about more than just the Lakers, talk about the whole NBA. And then Friday back with Lakers Bucks. I'll be there for that game. But I'm going to go take some NyQuil and sleep for 12 hours or thereabouts. Appreciate you guys. Shout out to the late night gang. And we'll talk to you all very soon.